I remember when Labour used to stand up to the Tories. That's just not happening anymore. It's time for new ideas. Something positive. Something different from cuts, cuts, cuts. So who's going to shout no way, enough to unfair policies? Who's going to look out for our kids, for our jobs, for our NHS? And who's going to keep Westminster to its promise of more power for Scotland? The question for us here in Scotland isn't which Westminster party will become the next UK government. The question is, who's really going to stand up for Scotland? Well,
Right, Rob. Collaborate and listen. Brexit is back with the brand new edition. No deal is the latest sensation. Because I made a mess of these negotiations. Should we be worried? I don't know. I'm stockpiling food like there is no tomorrow. The DUP control new world order. Why can't the EU? There won't be a hard border. Deadly at the negotiating table. Most definitely not. Weak and unstable. The Chequers plan was my last resort. But take reassurance from the blue and gold passport. You should listen to the message that I send them. No deal is better than a second referendum. Single market access. We can't solve it. Immigration, though, we can finally control it. No deal. Brexit.
There now follows a party political gangster rap on behalf of the UK Independence Party. Hello, I'm Nigel Farage, also known as Nigel Farage, Nigel Farage. So step back, Nicki Minaj, cause I'm a wicked politician at large, with a vision of a Britain with no immigrant barges barging in, causing arguments and argy-bargy. The Falklands is ours, we barred it from the Argies. Don't mess with the UK Independence Party, cause we've a tendency to get nasty. Each time I gave a splendid speech, we gained momentum, speed, Faraging with a vengeance. We are in the ascendancy, a swing of the pendulum, and we will gain a bench of seats. Unrepentantly pro-independency, my ideal ending seemed a never-ending referendum on foreign bureaucrats and where the heck we're gonna send them. Next on the agenda, bloody hell, I can't remember. I'm too busy thinking of becoming an honourable member. I'm that friendly MEP, aiming for an MBE. The Lib Dems and the BNP, they envy me. They know what I'm gonna be, so they're poking fun at me. I've no fear, bring your smear, sling your mud at me. But bugger bringing in a single currency. What's the problem with the monetary system we've got currently? Great Britain is an excellent island, significantly better than Ireland. I learn not to be outnumbered by a bunch of Scots, cause they've a tendency to pile in and get violent. But I'm a man of great class, make you look a straight ass. I carry on my campaign straight after a plane crash. Tell these champagne socialists I'm here to gate crash. I'm Moet to your baby sham and I can't wait to break glass. I dedicate this ungodly tune to an MEP gone too soon in memory of Godfrey Bloom. Rest in peace, Godfrey. What? I know he's not actually dead, but it's better than saying he was forced to leave for calling a group of women at the conference a bunch of sluts. Anyway, I digress. The point of the message that I'm trying to convey today is that voting for UKIP would be a splendid idea. The fighting bull strikes again. God save the Queen. Penelope Keith, Dennis the Menace, Roger the Dodger, Tintin. What? Tintin's Belgian? Why wasn't I informed of this? Why did nobody tell me that Tintin is Belgian? Get his literature out of my office now!
Damn bull. Doug will be.
New Labour alienated and made him marginalised. Pull hard on the tides, wouldn't be part of the lies. Man.
Right, Rob. Collaborate and listen. Brexit is back with the brand new edition. No deal is the latest sensation. Because I made a mess of these negotiations. Should we be worried? I don't know. I'm stockpiling food like there is no tomorrow. The DUP control new world order. Why can't the EU? There won't be a hard border. Deadly at the negotiating table. Most definitely not. Weak and unstable. The Chequers plan was my last resort. But take reassurance from the blue and gold passport. You should listen to the message that I send them. No deal is better than a second referendum. Single market access. We can't solve it. Immigration, though, we can finally control it. No deal. Brexit.
As much as you might love or hate Theresa May, I think we can all agree that she's not in an enviable position. She's been trying to reach a deal with the EU for months, and even now she's got a deal, it's been panned by politicians and the public alike. Many members of her own party don't even like it. So now all she can do is try and force the deal through the House of Commons and hope it succeeds. Getting the deal through the House of Commons could be a challenge. She needs 320 MPs to support her deal for it to get through the House and progress to the next stage. This could prove difficult for May. May has around 240 Conservative MPs whose support she can rely on. In contrast, we can be pretty certain that around 20 Tories will vote against their leader. You then have the vast majority of Labour MPs who will vote against May, with a few rebels on her side. Then the smaller parties will very likely vote against May. This leaves May short of the 320 votes she needs. It's possible that she can scrape together a majority if she can pull together the pro-Brexit and pro-Remain sides of her party, along with creating a deal which keeps the Scots and the DUP happy, and potentially even pulling across some Labour MPs from pro-Brexit constituencies. Because of this challenge, many doubt that May will be able to pull it off. After all, many of the votes she'd rely on from her own party and her supply and confidence partners, the DUP, aren't on her side. The DUP have said that there's basically no way they'll accept May's deal, and the pro-Brexit ERG Conservatives are calling for May to step down, so it's safe to say they're not the biggest fans of her deal either. So let's assume that May will fail to persuade MPs to support her deal and it won't make it through Parliament. Well, May's government has made it clear that there won't be another deal, with Downing Street saying that it's a choice between the PM's deal or no Brexit at all. May seems remarkably confident the situation will be resolved, commenting, "I'm sure that the British Parliament will want to deliver on the views of the British people and respect the democratic decision that they've taken." So May's government finds itself in a bit of a predicament. They have a deal which is unlikely to pass through the House of Commons, they don't have time to renegotiate a new deal, and most of them aren't happy to do nothing and just watch the UK crash out of the EU with no deal at all. So what can happen next? Well, May's job is certainly at risk. A number of Conservative MPs are unhappy with how their leader, Theresa May, has been running the negotiation process. As such, they're calling for their fellow Conservative MPs to submit letters of no confidence in her leadership, to trigger a leadership battle within the party. If 15% of Conservative MPs send letters of no confidence to the chairman of the 1922 committee, Graham Brady, then a vote of no confidence will take place. 15% of Conservative MPs is 48 members, so that's the number of letters that will be needed for a vote to be held. While some ERG MPs such as Jacob Rees-Mogg are known to have submitted letters, no one besides Brady knows exactly how many letters have been written thus far. If the 48 letter threshold is reached, then all of the Conservative MPs will be asked to vote on whether they support the Prime Minister or not. If she wins, then she continues to run the Conservative Party and her leadership can't be challenged for another year. If she loses the vote, then she'll be forced to resign and a leadership contest would begin. Those supporting the motion of no confidence are hoping that by putting someone else at the helm, the Brexit process will go in a direction more in keeping with their goals. The question is, are there enough Conservative MPs who actually support this move? And do they have anyone who could actually become Prime Minister and deliver the deal that they're calling for? And it's not just May who could find her job in jeopardy, as many people in the Labour Party are calling for another general election to be held. That might not surprise you. Of course the opposition are looking for a general election. The Conservatives are infighting more than ever before, their leader looks weak, and their proposed Brexit solution is unpopular with politicians and the public alike. Frankly, Labour fancies their chances in a general election, and they're hoping that they'll have the control over Brexit and that they'll be able to handle it better than the Conservatives are. Whether you think that Labour will do a good job of Brexit probably depends on your party allegiances and your feelings about the Brexit process. But regardless of your thoughts, changing leadership now could be very poor timing. General election campaigns tend to take months and require the focus of party leaders and MPs. Therefore, an election would be a major distraction from the Brexit process and could result in negotiations being put on hold altogether. The hope is that the upheaval would be worth it, and that a change in government would end the Brexit impasse. But that's a big gamble to take. The other issue with holding a general election is that it would require the sign-off of the House of Commons. Since 2011, the Fixed Term Parliaments Act has meant that the Prime Minister is no longer allowed to call a general election whenever they wish. Now elections happen every 5 years, meaning the next election should happen in 2022. The only way to force an election to happen sooner is by getting 2/3 of MPs to support the decision. For this 2/3 majority to be achieved, the move would need to achieve cross-party support. May would need to convince her own parties to vote alongside Labour for an election to take place. It's possible that May might want to hold an election in the hopes of collecting more votes and gaining greater control over the House of Commons. But considering how well that tactic went for her back in 2017, it's unlikely that May will want to pull this card again. One benefit of a general election is that it gives the public a chance to have their say. They can choose between the Prime Minister and her Brexit plans, or Labour and their generally more Remainer approach. However, a simpler way for the public to voice their opinion is through a second referendum. The idea of a second referendum, or people's vote, has been gaining steam throughout the year. When it was first proposed, it was laughed off by many, but support for a second referendum has been increasing in recent months, with the Lib Dems, Green Party, and even some Conservatives supporting the plan. You might expect Labour to be behind the plans, but leader Jeremy Corbyn hasn't actually commented much on the idea. Although the smaller parties might be passionate about the plan, without the backing of a larger group such as Labour, it seems unlikely that the public will be allowed a second vote. That being said, if May's deal fails in the House, support for a second referendum could grow. If May's deal isn't successful, then the UK is essentially left with two options: no deal or remain in the EU. Both decisions would be hugely controversial, so some MPs might be willing to back a second referendum in order to push the onus to decide back to the people. The idea of a second referendum faces another, possibly even bigger challenge: time. With only 18 weeks to go, there isn't a whole lot of time for a referendum to be planned, legislated, campaigned on, and held. In fact, UK law requires that a referendum take at least 10 weeks. That's in addition to the time it takes to legislate the referendum before the official campaign begins. Looking at recent referendums, it's clear to see that time isn't on our side for this one. It seems that the common issue is a lack of time. May can't reach a good enough deal because she doesn't have enough time. An election would be difficult because we don't have enough time. A second referendum would also be difficult because we don't have enough time. That March 29th deadline seems to be the root cause of a number of Brexit-related problems. It doesn't have to be that way though, as the time frame can be extended. Sound too good to be true? Well, it kind of is. For an extension to be granted, all 27 EU nations need to agree to it, which isn't likely. Also, extending the negotiation period wouldn't be popular back in the UK. Many of those who voted to leave are already getting impatient with how long the process is taking. Extending that further could be very unpopular. Although very different approaches, the idea of getting rid of May, holding a general election, holding a second referendum, or extending the transition period are all trying to solve the same core problem. They're trying to shake things up so that the UK can have a shot at reaching a better deal. But what if these strategies don't succeed? Well, the UK could default into leaving the EU without a deal at all. Leaving without a deal is actually the easiest option. If the government simply sits back and does nothing, the UK will automatically leave the EU on the 29th of March 2019 when the negotiation period comes to an end. At this point, the UK will have left and no longer have any agreements or trade deals with the EU. There are some people who support the idea of a no-deal Brexit, but they are in the minority. Even the UK's Brexit Committee says that leaving with no deal would be unsatisfactory and potentially damaging for both sides. That's because leaving without a deal would mean a sudden, huge change to how the UK operates and how its relationship with the EU functions. This situation is often called a cliff edge Brexit, as overnight the UK would go from being an EU member to having no formal relationship with the EU at all. This would leave EU and UK migrants in the balance, as well as creating an uncertain legal and trade environment for businesses. Some are in favour of this option. They often argue that Britain voted to leave the EU, so the UK should cut ties with the Union and not capitulate to any of their demands in order to get a good deal. These people see a no deal as the best way for the UK to completely end their relationship with the EU. While this channel tries to allow people to have their own opinions and believe whatever they want, I'm comfortable saying that the majority of experts agree that a no-deal Brexit probably isn't the best idea. Without getting too project fear for you, a sudden change like this could be very bad news for citizens and businesses alike, leaving the UK in a very unstable economic and political situation. If the Commons isn't happy to accept May's deal, and also isn't willing to cope with the consequences of leaving without any deal at all, they could choose to not leave the EU. This is an incredibly controversial option, and would likely cause chaos in the UK. Choosing to ignore the referendum result and remain in the EU would be seen by many as hugely undemocratic and a betrayal of the people. It is legally possible though. After all, the original referendum was only an advisory vote, but that doesn't mean that many MPs will be willing to face the public's wrath after cancelling Brexit. The other issue with withdrawing the UK's Article 50 declaration and just staying in the EU is that it might not actually be allowed. Can the UK undo Brexit? That it's not entirely clear under EU law if the UK would be allowed to simply stay in the EU after enacting Article 50. One of the authors of Article 50 says that the UK could withdraw it at any time, but not everyone agrees. Ignoring the referendum and staying in the EU would be a politically and legally questionable move. So the stakes are high if the deal isn't agreed by Parliament. May could be forced to resign, there could be a general election or a second referendum, the UK could leave without a deal, or they could opt to just forget the whole thing.
Hi, I'm Graham Hughes, one of the three blokes. Last week I did a video of all the misleading headlines that have been published by British newspapers and news sources over the last sort of 20-30 years about the EU. As a bit of a follow-up to that video, I'd like to present you with a list of things that the EU has actually done for the UK that are real, that should have really been reported on at the time by the tabloids, but for one reason or another weren't, because they weren't exciting, they weren't sexy as straightening bananas or banning sex toys or whatever nonsense the newspapers were coming out with in that last video that I made. So basically this is a what has the EU ever done for us kind of video. In fact, that's probably what I'll call it. So I made a bit of a list. I'm going to read it out again in a kind of ridiculous Daily Mail style voice, but here you go. First of all, EU scraps red tape for British holidaymakers. That's about it becoming really easy to go on holiday in the EU. One of the things I go on about a lot is the fact that I am currently banned from getting an ESTA to go to America for life. If I want to go to America, I have to apply at the embassy in London to get a real visa. And this is even if I'm just changing planes. And the application process is arduous. They want to know all the countries I've been to in the last 5 years, which for me is quite difficult because I do travel a lot. They also want to know what charities I've given money to, and also the password for my phone, or the pass number for my phone, so they can go into my telephone and look at all my stuff. They also want to know all my social media profiles to make sure I haven't written anything mean about their leader. At the moment, the other EU 27 countries don't do that to us. I can write what the hell I like about any EU leader and still know that I can go to their country. Not just on a holiday, but I can actually go and live there if I want to. Anyway, I'm going to come on to that. Now the Brussels bureaucrats want to make it easier to buy a house in France. Another good one, this, because in a lot of countries you're not allowed to buy property unless you are a citizen in that country or a resident, and getting residency if you're a foreign national can take a long time. Not so in the EU. You can just turn up, say, oh, I like the look of that house, and buy it. That's because of the EU. The EU did that. EU clears path for hard-working Brits to retire in sunny Spain. Again, other countries, if you want to retire there, there's a lot of red tape that you've got to go through. When I was in Panama a few years ago, there were a lot of older people who would stay there for 6 months and then leave the country for a week and then come back for another 6 months. Other countries, you don't even get 6 months. For instance, I don't even think you get a month now without applying for residency to actually stay there. If you're retired and you're trying to draw your pension from abroad, this can be quite difficult. The fact is, the EU now allows us at the moment to retire in 27 of the richest, most beautiful and most democratic countries on the planet. And we're throwing that away for some reason. Thanks to meddling EU, you can now marry that hot Lithuanian, no questions asked. And this is another thing that the EU has given us, which is the opportunity to get married to anyone from the EU without having to ask the government's permission. Whereas if I married someone who was Australian and I wasn't earning £8,600 a year, that Australian partner of mine wouldn't be allowed in the country. It wouldn't matter how much she was earning, it would matter how much I was earning. I'll take to fall into that trap. Oh, hang on, I actually did. EU makes it easier to drive around Europe. I don't know how many of you have driven in other continents like Africa or Asia or even down in South America, but crossing over borders with a car is a nightmare. And you have places where you actually have to pay the price of the car, the full price of it, as you cross the border, and then you'll get the money back for that when you leave. There's a lot of paperwork, a lot of bureaucracy. I think there's a thing called a carnet for your car or something like that. But it's a ball ache, believe me, trust me, it is. Untold riches. European Union secures momentous free trade deal with the third richest country in the world. This was something that happened this year. We secured a trade deal with Japan, which is the third biggest economy in the world, the third biggest country in terms of their economy in the world, after only in China and the US. And the EU and us, if we stay in the EU, we'll have a comprehensive free trade deal with them. This is incredible stuff. The EU now has access, and EU members, which is us, we are the EU, has access, unlimited access to a third of the entire world's wealth. Wow. It's Canada plus as EU seals the CETA deal. Again, the CETA or CETA deal, the Canadian Free Trade Deal. Again, it's something that is absolutely brilliant for British business and British industry, British farmers and British fishermen, and anyone who wants to sell anything in Canada who is British. Why we would throw this away and go back to World Trade Organization tariffs, which are 40% on Welsh lamb, I have no idea. Okay, next up we have Brussels expands free healthcare across Europe to all Brits. Again, what a great headline. We can get free healthcare in Spain, in France, in Hungary. We turn up and we get it for free because we're British. The actual people who live in the countries don't get it for free because they don't have free healthcare like what we do. But we do because of the EU, allowing us to continue with our protection that we have because of the EU, because of the NHS in other countries. Great. Why isn't this being reported? Why aren't people making more of a deal about this? Do you know why? Because it's not that sexy. Here you go. Here's some more non-sexy headlines for you. EU saves thousands of British workers from grisly deaths. This is to do with the health and safety at work, which is an initiative set up by the British. We pushed a lot of the legislation through. Some people complain about health and safety gone mad. It's not going to change. We're not going to redress, we're not going to take away rules that were there about wearing protective clothing and things like that in a workplace environment because we're leaving the EU. They're going to remain. So, and another thing, they've saved a lot of lives. A lot of lives. I used to work for the HSE. Oh my God, some of the things that have happened in workplace injuries are horrific. And the EU has done everything in its power to try and stop that, not just in the UK, but all over Europe, which is great, considering we can work all over Europe at the moment. Brussels saves the sick day. Brits to no longer lose out if they get ill while on annual leave. This is really interesting. So until the EU stepped in, if you got ill while you're on your holidays, you weren't allowed to say, hey, hang on, I was ill when I was supposed to have a day off, and that's not fair. Now, if you get ill during your summer holidays, you can say, hey, I'm not having that as annual leave because I was ill on those days. EU protects older people from ageism at work. Again, a lot of older people voted to leave the EU when the EU gave them protection to not allow their employer to say, hey, you're too old, you can't work here anymore. Until fairly recently, you could do that legally. You can't anymore. Thank you, EU. Thank you, EU. Right, what else have we got? EU removes turds from Britain's beaches. Again, the state of Britain's beaches in the 80s was disgusting, and the EU has helped clean them up. We can't deny this. These are true. These are all true headlines. Well, they don't exist as headlines because no one made them into headlines, but, you know, I feel like they should have done. Right, where was I? Breathe easy. Air quality improved by the EU. EU coaxed fish back to the River Mersey. The River Mersey was horrifically polluted when I was a kid. There was no fish in it whatsoever because we had the ICI chemical plants up the river, and also we were just pumping raw sewage into it. Now it's teeming with life, and you see every day, you see fishermen along the Mersey, along Otterspool Prom with the lines in the water catching fish. Brussels helps mums and dads to spend more time with their babies. Again, Not just maternity leave, but statutory paternity leave came in because of the EU. And don't forget, in the US, a model that we seem to be want to emulate, there is no maternity leave. None. There's no mandatory maternity leave in the US. I think it's only like Papua New Guinea and Suriname that also have the same policy. They have mandatory maternity leave in like Somalia, but you know, that's another matter. Moving on, we've got British lives saved as EU labels possible food allergies. And this came into the news quite recently with the poor girl who died after eating at Pret a Manger, was it? And this is something that's really, really important. If you have a food allergy, you need to know what food you're putting inside yourself. And the EU have made it so you have to clearly label if there are any allergies. And people see this as needless red tape, but it saves lives. It saves British people's lives. Okay, next up, I'm going to just change hands again because I'm holding the camera. I should have just put this on a tripod, shouldn't I? I didn't realise the video would be quite so long. I've got to get the train back later. Britons will be slaves. UK workers can no longer be forced to work out every hour God sends. And this is an interesting one because people are saying, oh, the EU interfere in our employment law. And they're like, well, yeah, they do. They make it so that you can't be forced to work more than 48 hours a week. Before, your employer said, you must work these extra hours whether you want to or not, or I'm going to sack you. Your employer can't do that anymore, but you as an individual still have the right to say, hey, I want to work extra hours because I need the money, or I just really enjoy work. I don't know. Come fly with me. EU sweeps away barriers to free competition in the air. And this is one of the favourite things about Britain's position in the EU for a lot of people, cheap air flights to other countries. Because until recently, you had to pay a lot of money to go to another country because it was an extra tax to go to another country. Under the agreements that have been agreed here at the EU, they've made it so you don't have to pay as much. So you can get these flights for like £5 to Lanzarote through EasyJet and Ryanair. It enables low-cost airlines to operate, which is why Ryanair are freaking out so much about Brexit, because it's going to be incredibly damaging to their business, and it means that poorer people in the UK aren't going to be able to go on holiday in other countries. They're just going to have to stay in the UK, which is probably why places like Skegness voted so much for leaving the EU, because they knew that it would just get rid of all the awesome competition, and we could just all be cold and wet on a holiday to Skegness instead. Yay, woo. Next up, we've got a baby boom. Brussels gives mothers 4 months paid leave. 4 months paid leave. 4 months paid leave. That's maternity leave. Thank you, Brussels. EU says hard-working British gals to be paid as much as blokes for doing the same job. There you go. Workplace discrimination. We're trying to stop the very old and still entrenched practice of paying men more for the same job and paying women less for doing the same job. All roads lead to roaming. EU blocks rip-off mobile phone companies charging exorbitant roaming charges. This is brilliant. I've just been on the phone here. I'm on the internet. I'm on the internet as we speak. I was listening to the radio before, and I'm just on my gift gap plan from the UK. I don't have to get special extra SIM cards or pay for these ridiculous charges, and they are absolutely ridiculous. We're talking people having to pay 4-figure sums after coming back on holiday and being hit by a bill. In my phone, actually, I've got my list of countries, because I've been to every country in Europe last year. I went to every country in Europe, and when I went to places like Andorra and Albania, it was telling me that my roaming charges would be one megabyte would be £5. £5 for 1 megabyte of data. Oh, I can't wait for that to start again. Anyway, so where was I? Baby boom. Here we go. EU forces companies to give hard-working Brits 4 weeks off a year with full pay. Holiday pay, 4 weeks a year. Holiday pay. Wow. I've always worked for myself, so I've never really been able to enjoy this kind of thing, but you know, whatever. One day I'll get a proper job. EU stands defiant against bully boy Russia. And this is a really important point. The whole situation in Ukraine, which has been allowed to manifest itself in the mainstream media and people's imaginations, is this thing where Russia was going in to save the Ukrainians from themselves is just such utter nonsense. And the only reason why why Putin hasn't tried to invade places like Lithuania, Estonia and Latvia is because they're part of the EU, which is something that I'm going to come to in a moment. Stop right there, Mr. Putin. God, you can see the headlines, just write themselves. From muck to brass even, Liverpool's £1.9 billion rebirth. And this is something that I feel about very, very strongly as a Liverpudlian. Having seen the situation in my city in the 1980s and it being given this helping hand by the EU to get itself out of the shit is remarkable. You go to Liverpool now, the turnaround is just incredible, and that's all thanks pretty much to the EU. Left to Margaret Thatcher's government, she would have just allowed Liverpool to fail. That was the plan. They were just going to allow it. Managed decline, they called it. Managed decline. Nice. So what else have we got? We've got Britons never will be slaves, come fly with me, paid leave, roaming charges, Putin. Brussels to the rescue, 60 million euros given to help repair flood damage. That was in the UK when we had the floods the other year. 60 million the EU gave us to help repair those the flood damage. We didn't get any money from any other countries, by the way. It's not like the US chipped in. North Korea, you know, said, oh, I'll help pay for that. Road to Hull, EU gives millions in funding for jobs and enterprise across Humberside. It's true. Barnsley Bonanza, EU gave Barnsley, which voted out, £4 million to local businesses. 4 million. Lincolnshire flood defences, £1 million from the EU. Gloucestershire, £2.5 million for future power to try and source new ways of creating power. Millions pour into Portsmouth as EU projects take off. Lancashire Sport wins 4 million from the EU. Bastards. A small consortium of hard-working British farmers, this is less than 100 farmers, won 11 million in support from the EU. It's Erasmus+++ as EU channels 100 million into our future geniuses. EU fronts major effort to save the British honeybee. It's a true story. Honeybees are back on the rise now, and there was a huge amount of investment from the EU to make that happen. Northeast businesses in 7 million grants from the EU. Breakthrough cancer therapy takes a huge leap forward thanks to the EU. This is the cancer research into immunotherapy, which is the third way of tackling cancer after radiotherapy and chemotherapy. This is the one where it teaches your own immune system how to fight the cancer. Huge amounts of funding from the EU for Britain to lead the way in that field. EU helps canny Scots to create the first zero emissions ferry, which is really exciting. Power from the waves, EU in Pembrokeshire bids for energy self-sufficiency. This is money being invested in Pembrokeshire and the Pembrokeshire coast in order to make money out of the waves, essentially, and tidal energy. It's bar-tastic as EU invests massively in Welsh farmers. Again, farmers getting a lot of money there from the EU. The EU supports RNLI to keep our fishermen safe. The RNLI has received millions from the EU in order to, basically, if someone's in trouble at sea, and this happens a lot with our fishing fleets, the RNLI are the people who go out and save them. They've got money from the EU. EU saves our Cornish pasty from pale imitations. This is to do with geographical indicators and the fact that if you make a pasty in Liverpool, you can't call it a Cornish pasty because it wasn't made in Cornwall, which really helps the makers of things like Melton Mowbray pork pies and Eccles cakes and all the rest. Keeping our kids safe, the EU bans dangerous toys. This is a really important point. The EU standards and EU safety means that if you have the CE mark on the toy, then if your child licks it, your kid won't die from licking some toxic lead paint off whatever toy it is. This is really important stuff, and the amount of the stuff that we buy now, anything you get from China has a CE mark on it. So we have Europe has forced China to come in line with what it wants for safety and standards and things that we used to care about. Now, I'm sure the same factory in China has cheaper imitation stuff going out to Africa and Asia that doesn't have as high a standard of health and safety, and possibly don't care about their children as much. But yeah, less said about that, the better, probably. Stop the rot. EU invest 640 million to save Brum landmarks. This is Birmingham has had 650 million from the EU to regenerate a lot of those old buildings in Birmingham city centre and around. Just going to let that noisy bike go. Oh, there's 3 of them. How £1 billion of EU money has benefited South Yorkshire. Yeah, again, another place that massively voted to leave. They have got over £1 billion of EU money invested, but they don't make a thing about it. This is probably the problem with the EU. They don't tell anyone this stuff. They just put a little plaque on the side of the sports centre saying this was EU invested from things, and no one makes a big song and dance about it. Unlike bendy bananas, which, you know, are the most important thing ever of all time ever. EU helps create 100,000 jobs in the northeast. This is really interesting because I think Brexit's about to take away those 100,000 jobs. Wales to receive over 2 billion in EU investment. This is between 2014 and 2020. £2 billion of EU investment. Lights, camera, action. EU invests 300 million pounds in the UK industry, which along with our gaming industry is a lot bigger than a lot of people realise. Our gaming industry is massive, and also receives lots of funding from the EU. You know, Grand Theft Auto is a British game. Yeah. EU funds cutting edge Horizon 2020 research. Again, Horizon 2020, a massively important step forward for scientific research, medicine research across the EU. You can now take your pooch on your jollies with you. Do you remember when you were a kid, if you're a bit the same age as me, and you wanted to take your cat or your dog on holiday with you, but you couldn't, because if you did, they'd have to spend 6 months in a kennel in quarantine? Remember that? Yeah, I do. Thank you. Western Europe, well, I'll come on to the last one in a minute, but another thing is all for one and one for all. I said in, I think maybe one of the previous Free Blokes videos, that 22 members of the EU are actually also members of NATO, which means that if they attack us, then they attack all of us. Well, I found out since then in one of the comments that someone left on that video, it's actually better than that. All the EU 28 countries, including the UK, signed up to the Treaty of Lisbon, and in the Treaty of Lisbon it says that if any country invades, say Russia, I love annoying the Russian files, it's so much fun. Anyway, say Russia invades the UK or takes part of Wales because they really want to be Russian, don't they? And they need to be saved from the MPs that they've elected in Wales because they haven't elected the right people, according to the Kremlin. Then the other EU 27 countries have a obligation to assist us, to basically send their boys in and send their girls in and send their army and tanks and bombs and things in to save us, to protect us. I think that's marvellous, and that brings me on to the last headline that should have existed but didn't, or doesn't. Western Europe not had war for longest period in living history? No, it's not living history, is it? In history. It's just history, isn't it? Because everything before humans is prehistoric. So let's just say this again. Western Europe not had war for longest period in history. And that's all down to the EU. And people are talking about bananas. People are going on about fishing rights, even though they've never even seen the ocean. Don't really care about fish. They just want a plank to, they just want a stick to hit someone with. Oh, fish, yeah, bendy bananas. Yeah. You want to make us recycle our sex toys. And it's all really quite dispiriting that the British, who I believe are some of the smartest, most capable, most inventive people on the planet, could have fallen for all this nonsense, hook, line and sinker. These guys, I'm not saying the EU's perfect, I really don't think it is. But we are the EU. And people go, oh, I don't like the EU doing this, I don't like the EU doing that. If they're English, it's a bit like them saying, I don't like England doing this, I don't like England doing that. But it wouldn't cross their mind for a moment to say, hey, I don't think we should be in England anymore. It would be a bit odd. And we would fight that, wouldn't we? Like we fought against Scotland trying to leave the United Kingdom. Most people would think, yeah, I think we work better together. And I think the EU in many ways has proven that we do work better together. The way it was described to us when we were over in Geneva a few weeks ago was what Britain is doing with Brexit is they're trying to do the most difficult thing that has ever been attempted in the history of the world. And we're trying to do it at the worst possible time because we've got Putin on one side who just wants to destabilize the Western world order, and we've got Trump on the other side who just wants to destroy the Western world order for some reason. Maybe he's in the pocket of Putin, I don't know. And so we are kind of piggy in the middle here, and we need to stick together. Us Europeans need to stick together, because if we allow this to go ahead, if we leave the EU and destabilize all of these countries, all of the economies around us, including, and massively destroy our own economy, I'm going to say that way madness lies, but it's worse than that. Seriously, that way war lies.
Is there someone controlling capitalism behind the scenes? You've heard about the reptilians, the Rothschild family, even George Soros. But there's one player with much more power than any of these guys, and nobody's ever told you about them. And that, of course, is the government of Norway? Yep, Norway is more than just a very, very rich country. Its government can have a real sway on international businesses. Think I've gone nuts? Well, at the end of this video, you are absolutely gonna see where I'm coming from. Norway is the only country on the planet where satanic black metal songs are on the Billboard charts. Yes, my dear viewer, if you ever travel to this country and turn up your radio, you might find yourself not listening to Taylor Swift, but instead to bands like Gorgoroth, Mayen, or Lil Meister, and their famous hit titled My Ass. So yes, there might be something a little odd going on with the music in this country, but Norway is one of the richest countries on the planet, playing in the same league as Ireland and Switzerland. But not only that, they're also one of the most egalitarian. This means that the difference between the rich and the poor is very subtle. Their welfare state is big, their taxes are high, and their lifestyle is good. But I'm betting you already probably know this. What you probably don't know is that Norway's influence on the international economy is way bigger than it looks. Yes, Norway is behind the scenes of one of the biggest corporations on the planet. But seriously, don't leave this video right now. I know what you're thinking, and no, this video is most definitely not a crossover with Alex Jones. You see, Norway has a population of less than 5 million inhabitants. New York City has more people. Nonetheless, these 5 million people have big shares in the world's major corporations. Yep, you heard that right. The government of Norway has its own hedge fund, and they are among the main shareholders in a lot of companies like Apple, Facebook, and Tesla. Norway might not have a big military, but they have an army of money ready to influence the world's economy. So the question now is, well, why is Norway so rich and powerful? And how did it get here? Now at this point, you're probably all thinking the same thing, and that is probably oil, and you are actually kind of right. Norway is one of the world's largest oil producers, but they actually have nothing to do with the other oil-rich countries. I mean, just look at this picture. Here you can see the skylines of Riyadh, Saudi Arabia's capital. It looks like a sci-fi city of the future, right? Skyscrapers, modern buildings, and plenty of lights. Now take a look at this picture of Oslo, the capital of Norway. you can probably see the difference, right? Now, if you've been following visualpolitik for a long time, you already know that having oil is not the same as being rich. In fact, as you can see on this chart, Norwegian crude oil is twice as expensive to extract as Saudi oil. For a better understanding, most of the Norwegian oil comes from the North Sea, and these oil beds are shared with other countries like the United Kingdom. However, Norway has taken the most advantage of that oil wealth. Okay, and I know what you're probably thinking right now. This is another visualpolitik video where Simon tells us how wonderful it is and how rich Norway got by privatizing companies, right? Right? Well, actually, this time the story is different. Norway is actually a great example of state capitalism. So now you might be wondering, well, what exactly is state capitalism? Why is Norway so rich and powerful? You still haven't answered the question, Simon. And what does it mean for a government to invest in the stock market? Well, do not worry, because today we're going to answer these questions. But as always, before we do that, let's have a look back at the history.
The Dutch disease.
Alright, so I do need to be honest here, because Norway has never exactly been a poor country, but it wasn't exactly always a wealthy one either. In the 1950s, Norwegians enjoyed a lifestyle similar to that of the French. This means wealthier than the Spaniards, but poorer than their Swedish neighbors, and of course the Americans. Back then, nobody expected Norway to have oil, but, well, things changed dramatically in 1959. At that moment, Shell started prospecting in the North Sea. Shell's an oil company in the Netherlands, and they were looking for potential oil beds in the shores of their country. One day, boom, they found some little gas sources, and whenever there is gas, there is oil. So they kept up their exploration, and this is how one of the biggest oil fields in the world was discovered. An oil field situated under British and Norwegian waters. During the 1960s, Shell got drilling licenses in those two countries. Years later, in 1972, the Norwegian government founded its own oil company, Statoil.
First you marry, then you start oil.
And this is how the North Sea oil boom started. During the 1970s, money flew into this country. In just 3 years, Norwegians doubled their GDP per capita. All of a sudden, the Norwegian dream meant working in the dinosaur juice industry. I mean, who really wants to go fishing for salmon when you can make a lot of money working with oil? And right now, it all might be sounding pretty fantastic to you, right? Well, actually, it's not. In fact, this phenomenon, it has a name. They call it the Dutch disease, or the curse of natural resources. Basically, anytime a country finds oil, its economy goes nuts. The government can waste piles of money while still lowering taxes. Citizens, they want to work in the oil industry because it's the most profitable. And, well, what happens next? Well, in a few years, your economy makes just one thing, dinosaur juice. And when you depend so much on a single product, a small change in the market price puts the whole country on the verge of bankruptcy. This is exactly what's happened in Venezuela and what could soon happen in other countries like Saudi Arabia or Bahrain. And this was the big difference between Norway and the United Kingdom. Both countries had Labour governments, but their policies couldn't be more different. In the year 1976, the UK was in the middle of one of their worst financial crises. The government couldn't wait to squeeze that oil wealth for all it was worth. Norway, however, they had a more stable situation and they could wait. So, well, what does this mean? Well, first, the government put very strict industry regulations in place. Plus, 50% of those oil rigs had to be in the hands of the state-owned oil company. On the other hand, foreign companies had to pay a 78% tax on the oil profits. And that's not all. Norway put a limit on oil production. Just look at this chart. Here you can see where the UK kick-started their production. At the end of the 1970s, the British were already producing more than 1.5 million barrels a day, while Norway was still doing a third of that. During the 80s, during the Margaret Thatcher administration, the UK kept pumping oil like there was no tomorrow, while Norway was still pretty much relaxed about the production. So what did they achieve by doing this? Norway was keeping the productive economy focused on oil, but just wait a minute, because there's another big difference. You see, during the 80s, Thatcher privatised British Petroleum. Norway's government, by contrast, kept control of Statoil. Even today, despite the company changing its name from Statoil to Equinor, the state still owns 67% of the firm. Okay, so now you might be thinking, well, oh my god, so wait, Norway's a socialist country? But just hold on a second, because the Norwegian economic system is actually kind of similar to that of China. And this is what experts are calling state capitalism. This means that the state controls a good share of the economy, but it behaves like a big private company. And so what does that mean? Well, check this out.
The hedge fund country.
Now, before we continue, I should make an aside here, because this beautiful, romantic and sweet melody you're hearing right now is the music of Enderthid, a black metal band that's from... No, they're not from Norway. They're actually from Colombia, but it sounds just like a Norwegian band, and they sent us their music for this video. If you want to hear more of them, we have a link to their channel in the description below. Alright, back to our story. So, do you remember the two pictures I showed you at the beginning of this video? Well, other countries like Saudi Arabia, they use their impressive oil wealth to live like a hip-hop artist on a Friday night. However, the different Norwegian administrations, both Labour and Conservative, have measured every last penny they've spent. And so what does this mean? Well, their oil wealth. It went into a piggy bank. And this is how we go to the year 1990. In this year, Norwegian Parliament, they realised three things. 1, they have a lot of savings. 2, oil market prices go up and down and they cannot control that. And 3, the best thing they can do is diversify their economy. And, well, how could they do that? Well, how about investing in the stock market? And so, as we say here at Visual Politics, so it was said and so it was done. This is how the Government Pension Fund of Norway, also known as the Oil Fund, was created. This is a hedge fund controlled by the Norwegian Central Bank. And so now you might be thinking, well, oh yeah, but what's so impressive about that? I mean, there are other countries with sovereign wealth funds. There's China, there's Australia, there's the United Arab Emirates, and... yes, that is true, but look, this is one of the biggest of them all. We're talking about more than $1 trillion American dollars. This means that if we divide up this fund by the entire Norwegian population, each citizen has more than $200,000 invested in stocks. But this is not the end of the story. According to the law, nobody can touch that money for any public spending. This means that the government can only use the benefits of the fund, but never the capital. And believe me, we are not talking about a small amount of money here.
How Norway's sovereign wealth fund made $130 billion in 1 year.
Also, according to the law, they cannot invest in their local economy, only in foreign companies. This is why today Norway holds 1.5% of all of the stocks existing in the entire world. Now, of course, some years are better than others, and according to many analysts, the management of the fund is overly conservative and doesn't make as much money as it could. But the truth is, Norway doesn't just use this for diversification. The oil fund is also a political weapon.
Norway's $905 billion oil fund flexes its shareholder muscles. World's largest sovereign wealth fund opposed 6,700 company resolutions last year.
For example, every year the Norwegian Central Bank pushes a blacklist with companies that they don't invest in for ethical reasons. This includes weapons manufacturers, tobacco producers, and firms involved in corruption scandals. But this is just the beginning. You see, having stocks of a publicly traded company gives you the right to participate in the shareholders' meetings. You can vote on corporate decisions and even suggest topics for discussion. The more stocks you have, the more important you are in those meetings. Here's an example. This past summer, 2018, Facebook started a new algorithm to filter fake news. They also started to take the wage gap seriously. These two decisions are the outcome of a shareholder meeting. And guess who added those topics to the meeting schedule? Well, yeah, it was Norway. And the same also happens with other companies.
Norway's fund backs activists' bid at Alphabet meeting.
As you know, Alphabet is the conglomerate that owns Google and YouTube. A small group of shareholders wanted Google to refine the fake news filter, and having the support of Norway's fund helps them win very crucial votes. The same thing happened with Apple. In this case, Norway is the 8th biggest shareholder, with more than $9 billion invested. And they aren't exactly silent in the shareholder meetings. In general, Norway is pushing some of the world's biggest companies to change their corporate policies on many different fronts. Of course, there's the gender gap, but that's not the only one. Part of the Norwegian ideology focuses on this too.
Norway's sovereign fund to focus on high executive pay.
In many ways, big multinational executives make big salaries despite the company losing money. We saw this several times during the financial crisis. As you can imagine, shareholders of these companies are not exactly happy with this. But it's hard to speak out when you only hold a small number of shares in the company. And this is where Norway comes in, as it's a loudspeaker for smaller investors. Many countries try to control the world with their militaries. Other countries try to sway foreign governments with diplomacy. Norway expands their power through influence on the biggest global companies, and this is the Norwegian conspiracy. But meanwhile, Norwegian citizens can sleep at night knowing that even if oil prices go down, they have their futures guaranteed. And now it's your turn. Do you think it's a good idea for a whole country to invest in the stock market? Do you think that the Norwegian influence is good for global capitalism, or do you think it's bad?
Very busy here already.
Are we? That's good, yeah. The best-selling boilers are Valent. These are all coming from the EU, and already we've had a 10% increase on it. We're being told there's going to be a further increase once Brexit happens. It's probably the biggest bollocks to Brexit sign in the UK, and it's exactly what we think about it. You know, it's complete bollocks. I actually think that we're the first business to really stand up in the UK. You've had many like Land Rover, Airbus, etc. have all made a noise about it, but actually haven't actually promoted it enough. They're okay, big national companies, they can move across anywhere in the world they want. Small businesses like us, we can't. We've got to stay here and put up with the problem that's going to happen. What a total pillock. What a cock. Yeah, I mean, nothing's going to stop me from speaking out, you know, unless I'm in a coffin, of course. I think at the moment it's a 50-50 chance it'll happen. Obviously, the government are getting very, very concerned about it. You know, it's not a done deal at the moment, and we can actually stop Brexit.
Well, I grew up in Scotland, where the decisions about our future are taken by the people who care most about Scotland, the people who live here.
All right, John. Collaborate, and this Brexit is back with the grand new coalition. No deal is the latest sensation. Because I made a mess of these negotiations. Should we be worried? I don't know, but I'm stockpiling food like there is no tomorrow. The DUP control new world order. Why can't the EU? There won't be a hard border. Deadly at the negotiating table. Most definitely not. Weak and unstable. The Chequers plan was my last resort. But take reassurance from the blue and gold passport. People should listen to the message that I send them. No deal is better than a second referendum. Single market access. We can't solve it. Immigration, though, we can finally control it. No deal. Brexit.
Hey, what's up, Adam? It's Lando. I'm just calling. I want to know where the fuck the album's at. I'm listening to Document. Too damn much.
Playing now. Indie Thought, okay.
Newsflash, I'm still the shit. Name a nigga who real is this. The realest out, I reel him in. They ain't know it, I feel him in, and they feeling it. Got their hands high as the ceiling is. Look my empire, I'm building it. Set it on fire, I'm killing it. Tell them RIP. Where you gonna find another nigga like me? All these niggas swear I got fake IDs. So I be insured like AIG in the VIP with a PYT. See what I mean? Like y'all niggas deaf. Kill one beat, then it's on to the next. Shoot 1-3, call fair from the rep. And my team goes hard in the paint, man, and y'all on the bench. But fuck y'all, you can't sit with us. Not a mean girl or a bad bitch, you just mischievous. Winning on tracks, need a piss and cup. Don't get it twisted, don't mix it up. They're talking rapes and they mention us, but they're talking shit, so I don't trip too much. Click so deep, they gotta walk around us. Haters know it, man, they talk about us. Man, it's like I've been chosen. Stay in this game, never folded. Man, I'm so focused. Finally got myself something that I can go put my whole heart and my soul in. It ain't nothing but showbiz. Now my career getting chauffeured. Got me feeling so golden to live in that city of roses. Okay, okay. Hold it down and they know what's up. It's okay when I'm in the cut and they see me shine when I'm rolling up. Yeah, we came through, showing love, hit the stage, taking dubs from the jump. Yeah, hopefully overseas, juices up like okay, 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 yeah, okay, yeah, okay, 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 stage, okay, okay, hopefully overseas. Yeah, I'm back like a nigga never left. Running on this beat, never running out of breath. Stay on campaign like I'm running for the press. Yeah, you running with the boys, I'll be running with the best. Yeah, you know I come from that west, and I wear it all on my vest. Ain't too many real niggas left, so you know I keep them in check. Yeah, getting paper, that's my intention. So the bitch is perfect, no Anna Kendrick. Man, let's be honest, everybody else just step be honest. Damn, Mindy, why you flexing on them? I don't know, man, I'm just doing me. Can't tell us nothing, I'm bulletproof, I'm so hands on and your hands off, so you can't touch us. That's low labor, need more paper, got no patience for the low maintenance, doing no favors. We tapped on, got no neighbors, so I'm so thankful. Need the whole thing if that's cool with them. Ex-girls still cool with them. Fuck boys, I'm cool with them. Even though I went to high school with a nigga feeling like a champ, looking like a king. Who when they write my challenge a kid? I will be dropping so soon, I just tell them go put any thought on your calendars, kids. We got it for real. Cases like Ally McBeal, putting some grease on the wheel without having to deal. Tell me, how does it feel? Okay, okay. Hold it down and they know what's up. And say okay when I'm in the cut and they see me shine when I'm rolling up. Yeah, we came through, showing love, hit the stage, taking dubs from the jump. Yeah, hopefully overseas, juices up like okay, 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 yeah, okay, 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 yeah, okay, okay, yeah, okay. Say it one more time.
Okay.
The coolest radio station in the world, Radio Ice, from Independent TV and Radio Scotland.
One, two, three.
Next up is Daniel Kaur and Nathaniel Kaur, Sometimes.
Sometimes I wish that I were famous. Sometimes I wish I knew my name. Sometimes I wish that I were innocent. Sometimes I just wish I were to blame. Sometimes I long to be a hero. Sometimes I wish the world would burn. Sometimes I think that I'm just ignorant. Sometimes I think that I can learn. Sometimes I never know what to do, where to go. Sometimes I always seem could just go numb. Sometimes I wanna drown beneath the pain. Sometimes I never know what to do or where to go. Sometimes I always see who I need to be. My heart's as fickle as the wind, wanting what it wants but knowing not why. Perhaps up here I'll finally find the answer to my soul. Perhaps up here I'll finally free my mind. Sometimes I never know what to do or where to go. Sometimes I always see who I need to be.
Next we have Tim Beek, Against All Odds. Playing now. Various artists, Common Home.
Another cold and dreary night in London. A foreign cigarette and dial tone. My arms need to hold you now in person, instead of longing, holding on the phone. I was wrong to ever think of leaving. Now I know this pain I can't survive. Went so far away, but it was self-deceiving. Take me back, make me feel alive. I'm coming home to your love. I'm coming home to your love. And I can't find the reason, just one lonely night too long. I'm coming home to your love. I remember well the days you loved me, but things were said only time could heal. I went away, it took so long for me to see that you're the only one that was for real. Someone said these are the times for courage. Stand your ground, don't ever run and hide. As I search for the person I wanna be, face up to my feelings deep inside. I'm coming home to your love. I'm coming home to your love. And I can't find the reason, just one lonely night too long. I'm coming home to your love. Ever since I went away, I knew that I'd be back someday, near the beach, returning with the tide. I hope it's not too late for me. Take me back, set me free. I'm ready now to lose my foolish pride. I'm coming home to your love. I'm coming home to your love. I can't find the reason, just one lonely night too long. I'm coming home. I'm coming home to your love. I can't find the reason, just one lonely night too long. I'm coming home to your love.
Track playing now. Rudy Roger, Summer Breeze. You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland, Channel Radio Ice.
DJ Kelvin on the deck.
The basement going
up. Track playing now. The Basement, Crazy SoundCloud.
I got a chick, I hit the mall, now niggas gone crazy. I want it all, I want the ball, so niggas gone crazy. I hit the block, I make a scene, now niggas gone crazy. I hit the weed, me and my team, now niggas gone crazy. I got a chick, I hit the mall, now niggas gone crazy. I want it all, I want the ball, so niggas gone crazy. Preach, take him to church, and she go, knee, sucking me up, and I can't breathe. I hop out this bitch, smoking too much, and I go, please, you gotta chill, cause I'm out the bus. We stash box in the corner. Sounds in my room, I'm zoning. Bitch act like she wanted. Too slow to get my act done it. Now I'm gon' do it just in time. Never trust ears, nigga, only trust eyes. Said it fuck with you, but it's only just lies. That's why you gotta always cross T's and dot eyes. Damn, a lot of charisma. Whole lot of boss, but I think I'm an amateur. The back we gon' hit my esophagus. So after the session, I'm gone. Got niggas in places that know us up. Pull up to someone you know it's us. She hit up my phone and I'm calling her. She hit up my phone and I'm showing up. See it with my eyes closed. Feel like time froze. This is my zone. You know I know. With my eyes closed, nigga, this is high. You gon' let me run it. Bitch, better let me run it. You gon' let me run it. Bitch, better let me run it. You gon' let me run it. Pull up the skirt and damn stunning. You gon' let me run it. Bitch, better let me run it. She my Mona Lisa. I'ma take a picture. Say she want a bricky. Put it in the system. Diamonds on me glisten. When I touch it, listen. Might be in the kitchen, but I never do the dishes there. My niggas, they run shit. If you want it, we gon' come quick. They want it beyond this, but we ain't fucking with the fuck shit. Live fast, no time limits. These niggas hate, and I'm fine with it. We strains got fired in them, so I restrain for the time given. Yeah. See it with my eyes closed, feel like time froze. This is my zone. You know I know. With my eyes closed, nigga, that's just how it goes. I hit the block, I make a scene, now they gone crazy. Me and my team, now they gone crazy. I got a chick, I hit them all, now they gone crazy. I want it all, I want the ball, so they gone crazy. Eyes closed, time froze, my zone. You know I know. With my eyes closed, nigga, that's just how it goes.
Tell me, have you heard about the Nazarene? Doing signs and wonders like the world.
Now playing. Morgan Greig, bound to join the Nazarene.
Just a touch, he makes the lepers clean. So get out of my way, I'm bound to join the Nazarene. Tell me, have you heard about the fuss up in Galilee? Talking straight, he throw the book at the Pharisees. Folks asking, how can it be? Just a touch, he make the blind man see. So get out of my way, I'm out the door, I'm down the road to Galilee. How you gonna hear me go talking on the telephone? I swear if he dies and rise up before your eyes, you sit there and say it isn't so.
We just don't know.
You know it seems so very extraordinary. your eyes. You sit there and say, what's that to me?
We just don't see.
I mean, we can't cater to no prestidigitator. Hey, let me tell you, I've begun my apprenticeship. I joined the Carpenters Union. I believe in the leadership. All up and down the Gaza Strip. You got the cripples doing triple back flips. I've seen him feed 5,000 with a single order fish and chips. He don't hang with the rank and file. He's cruising the original Miracle Mile. So get out of my way, I'm bound to join the Nazarene. Yeah, get out of my way, I'm bound to join the Nazarene. Yeah, get out of my way, I'm bound to join the Nazarene.
Are you living the daydream yet? Are you living the daydream? Are you living the daydream now? You say you have a shaking faith.
Next up is Dano, living the daydream.
I don't want to watch you die. So listen up and start to fly. Living a daydream where angels light the weary eye. The daydream will finally bring you to the light. Daydream, it's not the way that everybody tries. Daydream, oh I can see it in your eyes. Now you're locked behind a gate. Inside a house you can't escape. They will carry you with hands above to a place you'll finally love. Live in a daydream where angels light the weary eye. The daydream will finally bring you to the light. Daydream, it's not the way that everybody tries. Daydream, oh I can see it in your eyes. You're not the person that I've known. I still tried to get you on the phone. You said you need a faster beat. Now you're living in the street. Nothing left for food or rent. Is this what you really meant? Is this what you really meant? Daydream, are you living the daydream yet? Are you living the daydream? Are you living the daydream now? And I see it's cold tonight. You're on the corner, covered in white. What is it that brought you down? You were the party in this town. Living a daydream where angels light the weary eye. The daydream will finally bring you to the light. Daydream, it's not the way that everybody tries. Daydream, oh I can see it in your eyes. Daydream, where angels light the weary eye. The daydream will finally bring you to the light. Daydream, it's not the way that everybody tries. Daydream, oh I can see it in your eyes.
Next we have Josh Woodward, Princess.
Vivid dream as classes go by. And every day at 3 o'clock she's out the door and down the block and hurries to the river dock with a gleam in her eyes. And everything's fine for the day. nothing to get in the way of her smiling. There's never a care for tomorrow, 'cause Molly's a princess today. Oh, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. The barricade's a castle wall, 47 miles tall. The river's got a waterfall, the moat is so deep. The cedar trees are canopies, a ceiling made of needle leaves. A buzzing fleet of honeybees are guarding the keep. And no one can take this away. It's locked in her mind and can never escape. And there's never a care for tomorrow, 'cause Molly's a princess today. Oh, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. Real life can be lifeless and cold when your heart grows up and gets old. The dreams of your past never quite seem to last in a future that's so far away. But here in this place, you know Molly is a princess today. In a little while it's dinner time. She leaves the kingdom in her mind, a bookmark in the storyline. The chapter is done. The mystery of what will be tomorrow when the clock strikes 3. There beneath the cedar tree the princess will come. And there's nothing that she couldn't do when she closes her eyes and imagines the view. And there's never a care for tomorrow, 'cause Molly's a princess today. Yeah, well, there's never a care for tomorrow, 'cause Molly's a princess today. Oh, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. Everybody, la 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 la, la 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 la.
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland. Channel Radio Ice.
Doesn't matter what you think.
Next up is Axel Antunes, Does It Matter?
Put the phone down, everything is clear. Make yourself at home and pull it through the end of time. Let it go on all the things we'll have to say before I go. Doesn't matter your sensation. Are you kidding me? What a clever conversation. I never want to meet. Don't lose your sleep tonight. Just be yourself again. And with some luck you'll find another bed. Make yourself at home and pull it through the end of time. Let it go on all the things we'll have to say before I go. Turn around, leave the clown, tell the people what have you done. Look at you on the move, feeling lonely, feeling blue. I hope you stay that way.
Now playing Dano, Deep Ocean.
You disappeared long ago. Now I hide my erosion, and I cried my eyes out loud, cried my eyes out loud, and they fell into this deep ocean, and I cried my eyes out loud, cried my eyes out loud, and they fell into this deep ocean. Last time that we talked, I was hoping that you noticed me. I brought you your wine, an apology, and a little white lotus, and I cried my eyes out loud, cried my eyes out loud, and they fell into this deep ocean, and I cried my eyes out loud, cried my eyes out loud, and they fell into this deep ocean. And a memory is just a thought that is grown. Oh yeah, a memory has a life of its own. What I'm remembering has been formed and been shaped all along, with the face and the weight of a stone. Now I'm standing in shadows which I see 'cause you're shining. Yeah. On the walls all around that only keep rising. Oh yeah. And I cried my eyes out loud, cried my eyes out loud, and they fell into this deep ocean, and I cried my eyes out loud, cried my eyes out loud, and they fell into this deep ocean.
Playing now. Fresh Body Shop, Screw the Song. Next we have Daniel Coer, Simple Thing.
Well, who am I that I should think that I deserve any better life than this? 'Cause I've got love to share and hope to sing. Grace enough for every chance I might have missed. But still I find myself convinced I'm not enough, that I should fill all the emptiness inside. The things of earth below and the sky above have yet to satisfy my fearful pride. Well, I'm lonely and I'm broken, and I don't know who to be, and I don't know who I am till I'm gone. Living is a simple thing, but I just can't seem to get it right. 'Cause my whole world spins far too fast for me, and I'm dizzy as a simple fact of life. But I don't have the strength to slow me down, and I don't even have the heart to care. And I never had the patience for it anyhow, so I'll race on just as fast as I can bear. Well, I'm lonely and I'm broken, and I don't know who to be, and I don't know what I've lost until I've won. Cry for help tonight. Oh God, can you find me in here anywhere? Will you lead to my
coolest radio station in the world, Radio Ice, from Independent TV and Radio Scotland.
Next up is Josh Woodward, Troublemaker.
Troublemaker, what you gonna tell them when they come back? What you gonna tell them when they ask where you at? What you gonna have to say for yourself? Never gonna let them see your true face. Stick it in a box and put it on the shelf. Oh. She got a three-piece suit and a one-piece hairpiece, making everybody in the gutter feel like slime. Oh. Wake up, Mr. Troublemaker. Now your house is mine. Troublemaker, try to make a little trouble with me. Troublemaker, gonna send her back to Tennessee. Troublemaker, make your mind, make it die anytime. Put it in a wallet while you take what's mine. While you take what's mine. What you see with their open eyes, sympathize, fucking all the money with the eyes to the sky. Troublemaker, try to make a little trouble with me. Troublemaker, gonna send her back to Tennessee. Troublemaker, try to make a little trouble with me.
Next we have Sleazy Flowers, Upon the Throne.
Have you ever think about the kids inside? Sometimes it takes so long, bringing us down to the bone. Got to do what I can before you must leave. gradual and meek mistakes. What's the matter here? They are all into too messy. Doesn't matter, love, we're looking for the saving grace. Seems to like me, boy, I found an open way to be. I like to be on a high, but you are above the truth. Now the summer is coming, I'm on a way you can see the rain. Now I'm curious to see what we have remained. I'm waiting for your
So what's left when you're stuck in class and the men at hand won't cooperate? So what's left when you're fading fast, but you gotta pass to graduate? Well, the only thing...
Playing now. Morgan Greig, What's Left.
So turn your radio on to a rock and roll song. Baby, it's the only thing left. Just rock. Rock and roll. Just rock. Rock and roll. It's the only thing left. So what's left when the new girl at school, she winks and asks you to call her? But it's been 6 weeks since you had a job, and 5 weeks and 6 days since you even seen $1. Well, the only thing left is a driving guitar and the sound of the pounding drums. So find a hammering band with a jamming front man. Baby, it's the only thing left. Just rock. Rock and roll. Just rock. Rock and roll. It's the only thing left. So find a hammering man with a jamming front man. Baby, it's the only thing left. Just rock. Rock and roll. Just rock. Rock and roll. It's the only thing left. So what's left when you're out on a date? The sweet thing just says later. You turn around and you're down on the ground with your best friend doing the gator. Well, the only thing left is a driving guitar and the sound of the pounding drums. So stomp your feet and scream like the Beatles, 'cause baby, it's the only thing left. Just rock. Rock and roll. Just rock. Rock and roll. It's the only thing left. Just rock. Rock and roll. Just rock. Rock and roll. It's the only thing left.
take your place and work for years. The government won't ease your fears.
Now playing Dano, Eyes of Time.
You feel like you could have hit bottom. Yeah, but every person is a world of life. The hand of a child, man and wife, young and old, stand in line, seeing days through the eyes of time. The eyes of time. Through the eyes of time. Oh, then one week your number's up. Those things you wanted to fill your cup feel so little and unimportant, and all you wanted was some love then. Yeah, and every person is a world of life. The hand of a child, man and wife, young and old, stand in line, seeing days through the eyes of time. The eyes of time. Through the eyes of time. Oh, every person is a world of life. The hand of a child, man and wife, young and old, stand in line, seeing days through the eyes of time. The eyes of time. Through the eyes of time. Oh,
you're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland, Channel Radio Ice.
Next we have Redneck Surfers, Get It On. Playing now. Bill Shostak, No Secret.
It's no secret. It's plain to see. And I love you. And you love me. It's no secret. It's true. You love me. I love you. The only time we seem to meet is in the middle of the night. Only then can I feel your heartbeat. 'Cause something's not right. Together I see you and me, always and all time. But not everyone would agree, 'cause then it's a crime. It's no secret. It's plain to see. Yes, I love you. And you love me. It's no secret. You know it's true. You love me. Yes, I love you. Day I think of you, looking for some sign that you feel the same way too. And I know you're mine. Well, can't use no telephone, well, others can hear. And all I get is that dial tone, but the message is clear. It's no secret. And it's plain to see. You know it's true. You love me. Yeah, I love you. Yes, I do.
Track playing now. Axel Antunes, On Everything.
having problems tonight. Lines on my face when you smile. I'm feeling so alone, I miss the things I never had. Somehow I didn't thought you would try to see me fly. It's when I feel the color of your eyes. It's all for you, wakes up on my mind. I think I know your face for 100,000 years or more. That makes me understand why I leave to make you stay. The summer have a tea, I wanna be an Englishman. Don't need to wait for me, I love to see them watch the rain. And when I see the color of your eyes, it's all for you, wake up on my mind. A little bit of me, a little bit of you, everything. See the color of your eyes, the song for you wakes up on my mind. It's when I see this wider view, it's when I touch your skin, I feel this little you, this little me, oh, everything. I am alive.
Playing now. Linda Bruner, Wichita lineman.
And I drive the main road, searching inside for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire, I can hear you through the wine, and the Wichita lineman is still on the line. I know I need a small vacation, but it don't look like rain. If it snows, stretch down south, I'll never stand the strain.
and I want you all the time. In the Wichita land, it's still on the land.
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland. Channel Radio ICE.
Now playing Hidden Edge.
If only we
Now playing Shane Ivers' Chicken Hut Bluegrass. Playing now. Josh Woodward, California Lullaby.
The skies are cold and gray. The storm is on its way. The flat horizon, leafless trees, there's nothing far as you can see out here. You shiver like a wave. Your snow boots, soles are chafed. You left your heart in paradise. You left it all to roll the dice with me. And I will shake away the cloudy skies with a California lullaby. And when you're frozen with desire, we'll put our toes up to the fire, and I will sing your cares away. Sand between my toes, your hands beneath my clothes. The memories of golden days when we first met and parted ways too soon. Distance lost its flight when you laid down at night. Without a map you chose your heart. Now we are one, but you're still far from home. So let me shake away the cloudy skies with the California lullaby. When you're frozen with desire, we'll put our toes up to the fire, and I will sing your cares away. And when you're frozen with desire, we'll put our toes up to the fire, and I will sing your cares away. I know it feels like spinning wheels, digging you much deeper in the snow. The worry calls, the winter thaws, and you will watch the river start to flow. And in that place, the empty space will fill you with a warm embrace, and I will hold you tight until it's home. And I will shake away the cloudy skies with the California lullaby. And when you're frozen with desire, we'll put our toes up to the fire,
So let me take you back to paradise. All you gotta do is close your eyes. And when you're frozen with desire, we'll put our toes up to the fire, and I will sing your cares away.
Now playing. Eno Toivonen, Puppet Hedgehog riding a red convertible.
coolest radio station in the world, Radio Ice, from Independent TV and Radio Scotland.
Next up is Fresh Body Shop, Headlong Rush.
You
it's fun. But don't forget to take your medication. We're up to date, it's a revolution. I make them hear you with my huge megaphone. You should get involved in my head, you should get involved in my head, rush now. You should get involved in my head, rush now.
Next up is The Love-Ins, Nirvana.
Are bored of me, the dark moist inside of my body. I don't blame them. Disfigured face, forced to grieve. The makeup stains where my sweat should be. Thrust your fingers compulsively till you drool blood down, sick for teeth. I am dry, I am dry, I am dry. I am dry, I am dry, I am dry. Have some standards, will break your bones. When I'm too far gone, hang like Anatone. There's X's in your eyes, there's X's on this tape, there's X's on this bottle. When I hear you scream, I am dry, I am dry, I am dry. I am dry, I am dry, I am dry. If your lungs are clean, are you unhappy? If your mind is negative, you're unhappy. If your lungs are clean, are you unhappy? If your mind is negative, you're unhappy. I am dry, I am dry, I am dry. I am dry, I am dry, I am dry.
Could love drive you?
Track playing now. Dano, The World Will Break Apart.
Be the only way. And would it be a crazy question? Would you take it all and throw it all away? Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. And the world will break apart today. Could freedom be between the lines? Enjoy a life foundation springing up to find every thought will lead to nothing. No matter how hard you try to define. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. I open my arms to the end of time. I got one hand on a mommy and the other on a green tree, orange-eyed gecko. I got one foot on the street in the village, and the other in a mine under Colorado sunshine. Under Colorado sunshine. Could you stand in the way of progress? Could you laugh it off and say, I'd let it all fall down and let the rhymes come. I'd waste away and let the roots grow around some. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. Take me down to the final decision, and the world will break apart today. And the world will break apart today.
Next we have Rudy Roger, Hello.
listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland, Channel Radio Ice.
Now playing Mr. Fessy, Concrete Nights.
In the concrete nights in the hardwood pavement. Don't wanna be serving time in the concrete nights in the come and save me. We're living with the flashing lights in the concrete nights in the hardwood pavement. Don't wanna be serving time in the concrete nights in the come and save me.
Track playing now. Dano, and Discovered Creature.
I saw an undiscovered creature climbing on the mountainside. You know that no one else believed me. How about that? With green eyes and white stripes and salted tears, I knew that these were just its cautionary features. Keep telling myself nothing to fear. It's just an undiscovered creature coming up to meet you. He's the one that's scared. It's just an undiscovered creature coming up to meet ya. He's the one that's scared. The undiscovered creature. The undiscovered creature. I never saw this one in books or heard a myth of it. Looks like it came from underwater. I thought I'd seen every life form, but there it is, an undiscovered creature coming up to meet ya. He's the one that's scared. It's just an undiscovered creature coming up to meet ya. He's the one that's scared. The undiscovered creature. On and on and on and on and on and on. The undiscovered creature. On and on and on and on and on and on. With green eyes and white stripes and salted tears, I knew that these were just its cautionary features. Keep telling myself, nothing to fear. It's just an undiscovered creature coming up to meet ya. He's the one that's scared. It's just an undiscovered creature coming up to meet ya. He's the one that's scared. The undiscovered creature. Undiscovered creature. On and on and on and on and on. I thought I'd seen every life form, but there it is.
Track playing now. Color Out, Forget Yesterday.
Tell me everything's okay, but I won't say a word if that's what you need to stay here. And I know what's been on, you thought her every day, and every time I try, you're just pushing me away. I know you can't believe it, it's not easy when you're feeling numb to blame, but I can't find a way to tell you everything's okay. No, I can't find a way. Well, how long can we go? Really, how much can we take? The pain behind your eyes is a dead giveaway, and we can just stay here when it's so clear there's no future past today. But I can't find a way to tell you everything's okay. No, I can't find a way. Will you take my hand, let me show you the way? We can find a place to forget yesterday. 'Cause I can tell you've been lonely, you're not the only one to say. I can see you still holding on to something you can't change. You can't change. You can't change. Will you take my hand? Will you take my Take my hand, let me show you the way. And we can find a place to forget yesterday. 'Cause I can tell you've been lonely, you're not the only one to say. I can see you still holding on to something you can't change.
Now playing. Daniel Kaur, Be Yourself and Love.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained, here at the end of one more empty day. Tomorrow's always just the same, one more nothing on my resume. Well, I can't keep up with never-ending list of stuff to do, folks to see, time to use and things to be. Would you hurry up and slow down? You don't gotta change the world, you don't gotta be someone, just gotta be yourself and love. My ambition's running wild, here at the start of one more sleepless night. All the things I wish I'd tried, all these dreams to live before I die. Well, I can't keep up with my own striving after fantasies of epic deeds of great acclaim and living easy. Would you hurry up and slow down? You don't gotta change the world, you don't gotta be someone, just gotta be yourself and love. Just gotta be yourself and love. Just gotta be yourself and would you hurry up and slow down? You don't gotta change the world, you don't gotta be someone, just gotta be yourself and love. Would you hurry up and slow down? You ain't gonna save the world, you don't gotta be someone, just gotta be yourself and love. Just gotta be yourself and love. Just gotta be yourself and love.
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland. Channel Radio ICE.
Playing now. Redneck Surfers, warning.
I really like you at all.
Next we have Josh Woodward, Goodbye to Spring.
Lay and put your weary soul to rest. Yeah, I will try to do my best to keep you safe inside this nest and keep the gravity from pulling you to earth. I'd like to say this gets more clear when it's more cloudy every day. But summer's gonna come and burn the stormy clouds and all the doubt away. Sleep, little girl, 'cause when you wake it's gonna be a different world. So close your eyes and say goodbye to spring. It's true, the spring is coming to an end. You're not that fragile anymore. I know what's there behind that door, and it's just waiting in the wings to pull you in. I know you think you're safe in here inside these insulated walls, but I can't hold this house together, not forever, yeah, and soon it's gonna fall. Sleep, little girl, 'cause when you wake it's gonna be a different world. Everything will change. Everything will change. This door slamming shut, it's gonna catch you if you're ready or you're not. So close your eyes and say goodbye to spring. Slow down, 'cause winter's just around the bend. Don't make a sound, and close your eyes and say goodbye, yeah. It's gonna be a different world. Everything will change. Everything will change. This door slamming shut, it's gonna catch you if you're ready or you're not. So close your eyes and close your eye to spring. Sleep, little girl, 'cause when you wake it's gonna be a different world. Everything will change. Everything will change. This door's slamming shut, it's gonna catch you if you're ready or you're not. So close your eyes and say goodbye to spring.
Playing now, Rudy Rogers Rafty. Next we have Dano, Tour of the Flowers.
Draws me to you. You bring me out from nowhere. You shine like the sun. There's a mystery in your eyes of blue, and it's your smile that tells me you're the one. I wanna take you on a tour of the flowers, a tour of the flowers. I wanna spend an incredible hour on a tour of the flowers. I wanna take you on a tour of the flowers, a tour of the flowers. I wanna spend an incredible hour on a tour of the flowers. To see all of history in a shower of every god and all their wisdom and power. I'll take you higher than a song can lift you, baby. Then take a dive off a cliff and rock formations. I wanna take you on a tour of the flowers, a tour of the flowers. I wanna spend an incredible hour on a tour of the flowers. I wanna take you on a tour of the flowers, a tour of the flowers. I wanna spend an incredible hour on a tour of the flowers. You were the girl in the fountain with honest senses. I never thought I'd see those waters in the distance. The clouds parted, baby, and I came up from underground. Yeah, I came uninvited without making a sound. And I said, shh, quiet now. And I said, shh, quiet now. I can't wait to laugh with you again. I'd walk through a flame in the night just to take you through all the fields of poppies and of grain. I wanna take you on a tour of the flowers, a tour of the flowers. Spend an incredible hour on a tour of the flowers. I wanna take you on a tour of the flowers, a tour of the flowers. I wanna spend an incredible hour on a tour of the flowers.
Coolest radio station in the world, Radio Ice, from Independent TV and Radio Scotland.
Next up is Lost European, The Beginning of the End. Now playing Josh Woodward on Brevity.
In a circle like a dizzy little top, and I am calling all the people I'd forgotten about and trying to tell them that I figured it out, but it's a lie, and all the stupid things I say and do and never really stop when I should never have begun. I really ought to drop it, but it's faster when you don't even have time to stop and think about the things that you were saying, cause they never really matter. But it's empty spaces in the air, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. Oh no, oh no, all the million little empty spaces in the air, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. Oh no, oh no, oh no. But I never was a fighter, and I never was a poet, and I never was a writer, though you never really know it, cause I'm full of all the knowledge that you needed to know, and I will share it if you're ready or not, because I know I heard that Jamie was a wicked fan and Timmy's dropping out, and all the other little things that I was thinking about, like how mosquitoes have malaria and dogs have lice. I could go on for half an hour, cause I hate to leave a million little empty spaces in the air, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. Oh no, oh no, all the million little empty spaces in the air, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh. Economy of speech is not a virtue, it's a sin. I never want to tell you once what I could say again and again and again and again and again. And I know you want to tell me what you think of what I say. I promise you that I will give you time later to weigh in if you want to, if you want to. But I forgot to tell you, I was heading out to take my puppy for a walk, and then the strangest little thing came out and ran across the sidewalk. It might have been a squirrel or a chipmunk or a prairie dog, but something about the tail wasn't right, but that's another story. Everyone just stopped and stared with blank expressions, motionless. For a second everything was silent and commotionless. I turned, I said to Fluffy, that's a cute little Saturday, but then it went scampering off, and that was better than the empty spaces in the air, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. Oh no, oh no, all the million little empty spaces in the air, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. Oh no, oh no, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up, fill it up.
Track playing now. Fatima, bring back the good old days.
Bring back the good old days. Come on.
Now playing. Ram Rum, Don't Let Me Down.
Nothing is so good, and nothing is so bad. There's always time to say goodbye. Never looking back, never looking back. It's never too late to live again. Not now, but let me down. Do not regret. Not now, but let me down. Do not regret. Life can be so real, or just be a dream, but you have to live it every day. If you do not know anything, do not tell me histories, then you will live for everything. Not now, but let me down. Do not regret. Not now, but let me down. Do not regret. Time is over. Close your eyes. You remember, you never die. Now it's closer. Do not live for me. You know that one day we will grow again. The cold is inside of me. Nothing you can do. The fire is off. We never come back. Now I discover alive within me. There is still hope. Another eternity. Not now to let me down. 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 Don't 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 let me down.
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland. Channel Radio Ice.
Next we have Cutworms, Don't Want to Say Goodbye.
goodbye, goodbye. Don't wanna have to say goodbye. Thank you.
Playing now. Bino Toivonen, Catnip. Playing now. Kevin MacLeod, Windy Old Weather.
drawing God in candle wax.
Track playing now. Dano, Picture of Clouds.
Whispering about butterflies to her mom in the morning. Having breakfast with her daughter and in love with the story. Nothing is free and you can starve alone. Wed to a man and a place and a home. Willing to face things she can't sleep without sinking. And stay alive by thinking about her baby painting a picture of clouds. Oh, a picture of clouds. Oh. Violin like it was a memory inside. The tune is haunting like a dream you could recognize. Mother can hear her through the door and is proud, helping her mind escape the dead and their town. Nothing is free and you can starve alone. Wed to a man and a place and a home. Willing to face things she can't sleep without sinking. And stay alive by thinking about her baby painting a picture of clouds. Oh, a picture of clouds. Oh, it can all come together with a gentle touch. No need to roam when you have so much. Nothing's been better since she arrived. Yeah, life can happen. You do more than survive. On the porch, coloring canvas with spinning suns. The girl is fierce like a lion, yet unleashed on the world. Far from things wicked and tattooed, now she plays cello. Mother surprises her with lemonade and jello. Nothing is free and you can starve alone. Wed to a man and a place and a home. Willing to face things she can't sleep without sinking. And stay alive by thinking about her baby painting a picture of clouds. A picture of clouds. Oh, the stars are aligning, the sun's always shining in a picture of clouds.
You're listening to Independent TV and Radio Scotland. Channel Radio Ice.
Playing now. Redneck Surfers, Cows and Horses.
Check, live it right. I know say I it's from the rebel farm.
Now playing. Ria's work, more.
Hiya, I them say more. And every posse them a shout out more. And the dance floor and them a ball out more. And the dance floor and them a wanting more. More. And every massive them a shout out more. And the dance floor and them a balling out more. And every massive them a shout out more. I mean say, I give them bass and say, more drum. From uptown, me say, up to the slum. Every old man, every youth man, them a want more bass, we come. And me say, I'm more fire level, I set it higher. We say, I'm more fire come. I burn Babylon with this a fire bass and a fire drum. More. And me say more. I hear the massive, them a shout out more. On the dance